First of all, good afternoon. Welcome along to Manx Radio's Mannin line for a Friday. It's the 28th of August. Alex in the chair through until 1, and it's an open line on 66 13 68. For you to get in touch, have a bit of a chinwag, get on air, and talk about the topics of the day or whatever. It's ever getting your goat. You can, of course, send us the text to 166 177. Or send a WhatsApp to the same number. What are the issues that you maybe feel that MHKs, or prospective MHKs, should I say, are ignoring in their manifestos that you think we should be talking about? Because it's interesting, isn't it? The topics that come up at election time aren't always necessarily the same topics that seem to be the ones that are then dealt with once people have got your vote. I mean, the housing was a big topic in the 2021 general election, and yet we don't seem to have had a huge amount done about it in the last 5 years. There's not a huge amount of action. There's not been a huge amount of change seen. And I think the general feeling is that the last administration has done a lot of talking and not much doing in comparison with maybe like the other Channel Islands, and we're not better off because of it. So is it being talked about on the doorstep now? Because housing doesn't seem to be the big thing that everyone's talking about. Speaking of which, by the way, before we get going, just a reminder of those constituency debate programmes. They start Monday evening, doing them in alphabetical order, Arbury, Maloo and Castletown. They're not only going to be live on the radio, you'll be able to watch them as well. If you've got a smart TV, you can watch them on YouTube there. You can watch them on our YouTube channel. You can watch them on Facebook. And there is a direct link on the Manx Radio website as well, the Watch Live section there. And or you can come along and be part of it. Or just come along and sit and watch as part of the audience. You can register for tickets for free at manxradio.com. Just put your details in there, get yourself a ticket, and we look forward to seeing you. We're going to be doing, obviously, all 12 constituencies, and all candidates have been invited to take part, with Beth Espy chairing the debates. Myself and Phil Gorm will be there as well. And you'll have the chance, if you're a member of the audience, to actually ask a question. Now, what sort of topics have we been discussing? Well, I mentioned before, does it matter where your MHK lives? Is this a big thing for you? Okay, give me a call, 66 13 68, if you think it is. Or this new thing, I say new, there's been no change, but that we have candidates standing in more than one constituency. Okay, and this only seems to be a relatively recent thing, but it does beg the question that, do the rules effectively allow someone to stand in every constituency? So if you had the money, the time and the wherewithal, and you wanted to stand in all 12 constituencies, and in theory you had the wit, charm, the charisma and the likability that you got voted in all 12 constituencies, does that mean you could possibly just end up with just 2 MHKs? That I admit it's a ridiculously unlikely scenario, but would that be the case? Could you just end up with 2 MHKs? And if so, surely the rules should kind of prevent that. I'm asking the question. See if anyone knows the answer. Please let me know. Some people might say, I mean, do you think that maybe ending up with 2 MHKs might be a good thing? I don't know. I remember that Stu Peters used to say that, the benevolent dictatorship was the thing he would always like to have. Well, maybe that's the way to go. But in terms of MHKs, does it matter where they live? Should they live in the constituency they're representing, so they actually know on the ground what the challenges are, that they have to drive down that dreadfully potholed road every day, that they possibly could be responsible for getting repaired? Or is the Isle of Man small enough that it doesn't really matter? I'm after your opinion. 66 13 68. Thank you very much to Daphne, who's been in touch, saying, when it comes to the elections, all the talk, but nothing will change. The civil servants rule our country. Wake up, people. All the best, says Daphne. There is that feeling, isn't there, that the civil service does seem to be the blockage on the Isle of Man. And I know that everyone always will cite the good civil servants, of which there are many, but it doesn't seem to excuse the fact that everything always seems to be a blockage. Nothing is ever, we can do this. It's a case of, well, it must go through this and it must go through this. Compliance and bureaucracy tying everything up. So thank you, Daphne, for that. Yeah, this is an interesting one. This went through my mind. 521 has texted in saying, Alex, what is it with all the UK registration plates on the island? I've never seen so many. It could be a mixture of both. The fact that we may be having a lot of new residents, or it is actually the tourist season. It would be nice to think that, we've got lots of people who come over on holiday and are driving around. But I did note there does seem to be just, anecdotally, more UK reg plates over here at the moment. And tourism is on the increase on the Isle of Man. Maybe it's just more people coming here rather than going off to other places. Alan's been on. This is something that Alan's got a bit of an issue with. 867, he says, twice this week I've taken a friend to a doctor's surgery at 10 a.m. to fill out some papers. Both times the waiting room had just one person, yet they said they had no appointments. It's interesting. I mean, the question then begs have we got enough GPs? I don't think it's space in the buildings that's the problem, is it, Alan? I think it's whether we've got enough GPs to see the amount of people. But, yeah, it's a very interesting point. Your doctor's surgeries did used to be crammed full of people when you were waiting. And I myself, I've been to the quacks this morning, and I did sit there with just one other person. I don't know. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the text from 667. I'm going to have a read through that before I read it out on air, because I'm probably going to get myself in trouble. Also, another topic that has been on people's lips is the queues on Douglas Promenade for steam packet sailings. Now, this is something that I heard was mentioned on breakfast this morning, and it's been anecdotally mentioned, I think, by a couple of candidates as well, that Douglas Promenade now seems to be the overflow for Douglas Harbour, because the steam packet bought a boat with such high capacity that the harbour now doesn't have, at peak times, the space to accommodate all the vehicles and all the freight that are queuing up to get on it. Now, surely that is an issue. Now, whose issue is it? Okay, the steam packet causing the issue because they've got a boat that's too big in terms of capacity, and we haven't got vehicle marshalling space big enough to accommodate it anymore. I've noticed this morning there's a big sign on the harbour saying it's closed to freight deliveries because there's no extra space. Or is it the fact that the DOI need to sort their harbour out? Because we've now got these larger vessels that take more and more cars and more freight going in and out of the island, and they just don't have the space at the harbour. Well, that's a question. Is there joined up thinking going on? But one's a government department, one is an arm's length government company. Should this have been dealt with before we start clogging up the roads? Because I know this morning the Larne sailing had motorhomes and everything all lined up down the promenade. So I'd be interested in your opinion on that or any other topic, to be honest. 66 13 68. Bonzo is on. Morning, Bonzo. Oh, in fact, afternoon, Bonzo. How are you?
Oh, well, I'm reasonable.
Oh. Bonzo, where have you gone? Oh, I've lost Bonzo already. There we go. I don't know what's happened to Bonzo there. I'll let Howie try and find Bonzo wherever he's gone. He sounded all right there. Let's go back to to some of your messages. Desmond's been on saying, could I stand in every constituency and be the sole MHK, please? That's my question. Could you? Okay. John in Onken says, why do no candidates talk about the wind farm? I think quite a lot of them are. We are obviously aware of the Attorney General's advice that if you're going to state a position on the wind farm and then you end up being in a position where you have to make a decision about it, there's a legal issue there. But a lot of the prospective MHKs and candidates have thrown caution to the wind on that one and have just come out pinning their colours to the mast. So, John, I think, you might want to do a little bit closer listening and have a look through some manifestos. They definitely, a number of them have made their point on that. Bonzo's back. He's still alive. Are you there again, Bonzo?
Yes, I'm still alive as far as I know.
Good.
But I think it's the satellite over Port St Mary again.
Oh, yes. The Little Green Men or something. It'll be something like that. What would you like to
yes,
talk?
or else it's the World Economic Forum or the government.
Oh, yeah, there's bound to be something like that. So what would you like to talk about?
Yeah. Yes, well, our elections at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, having listened to many of the candidates, Many of the candidates are, of course, saying what people want to hear, but they're not saying anything about what people need to hear.
Do you not think that's been politicians through the ages, though, of course?
Well, yes, of course, there's always going to be something of that. But on the one hand, you have people saying, oh, we want transparency, we want honesty, we want people to be direct with us about stuff. And, well, I can't hear anything that's being direct about the problems that are going to be facing us. A lot of people coming out with, yes, we must do something about X, we must do something about Y, we must do something about Z. But they haven't bothered to peel back a beer mat and get a pen and actually work out how much that may cost.
Well, in some of the candidate interviews I've done, Bonzo, when you actually challenge the candidates on how are they going to do these promises, they all seem to vaguely have that thing of, well, you can't do it on your own, you have to build consensus and everything else. So it almost feels like you're voting for aspirations, but not much changes because they don't really have the power.
Well, not only don't have the power, don't specifically understand the extent of the problem. As I say, get a beer mat and split it open so you can use the white bit inside and write on it. Then if you take many of the kind of promises that people are talking about, yes, let's do something about healthcare, yes, let's do something about steam packet prices, yes, let's do something about personal allowances, yes, let's crack on with building Castle Russian High School. Yes, let's do this. Yes, let's do that. And by the time you add it all up, you're talking about something like approaching £500 million.
So what are you proposing, Bonzo? Because you can't cut your way into growth. You're managing decline. So are you suggesting no investment at all?
No, I'm suggesting that we adjust the tax system so that the wealthiest actually pay a bit more. We don't have to squeeze them until the pips squeak or anything like that, but just having a fair, progressive system of taxation rather than the topsy-turvy one that we have now, where we have essentially a welfare state where 80% of people are subsidising the low tax of the top 20%. Then that may make disposable income available for most people in order to go out and go and do hospitality and buy things and go to coffees and everything else that pushes the local economy, and then also produce more tax revenue.
But wouldn't that be in terms of
being directly taxed?
But to rewind the clock a bit, aren't you talking thin end of the wedge stuff here? Because you know full well that if history teaches us one thing, that you start off with just a little bit, and eventually you lose your competitive edge. We started with bits of regulation that needed to be done and all this kind of stuff, and we've lost huge swathes of the financial sector because we became so squeaky clean. They went to somewhere else which didn't have the same sort of ethics, and basically all these they've gone to other countries which aren't so unbelievably over-regulated, shall we say, and compliant. So isn't it a case of that if we start a little bit of tax, we'll just go more and more and more, and then eventually we'll end up with, well, where did all the high net worth individuals go? Well, they went to somewhere else which was more competitive than us.
No. UK is about to get tax rises. The UK top rate of tax is never in a million years going to be below 40%.
I'm not saying UK, I'm talking about further afield than UK.
Well, yes, but the thing is that most of our high net worth individuals are from UK. They don't come here for the weather, and they do actually, some nowadays, because it's cooler than very, very hot places where you can barely exist. But they don't usually come here for the weather or the nightlife. They come here because it is the nearest low-tax jurisdiction to the UK, and it is the low-tax jurisdiction in proximity to the UK where you can just walk in and buy property and come to live. So that's why they're here, and that's why you're having estate agents, so I hear, having a great deal of interest at the moment from UK.
And can I ask, in terms of, back to your original point to finish up on, that you said that the candidates aren't saying what people need to hear, but what they want to hear. Surely this goes down to everything from, your Brexit campaigns to everything else that, and I'm going to quote a Hollywood movie here, a person is clever, people are stupid. That's the Hollywood quote. In the fact that actually, if you're trying to win over the public, a lot of the time they're not going to be going through all the manifestos. They're not going to be going through the details, and they just want somebody who they will say what they will promise to improve things because they feel things are bad, and then 5 years later they'll complain that they haven't done what they promised.
Yes, the appeal of the monorail, monorail, you know.
So,
you know the monorail song.
I do know the monorail song. So in terms of, how you fix it, would you prefer candidates just to be blunt? But do you think, this is the crux of it, if they're blunt, do you think there's any chance of them actually getting voted in?
Well, there we have the eternal question. No, the Isle of Man electorate is very often saying, yes, we want truth, we want it like it is, we want transparency, etc. And that is the last actual thing that they want at all.
Okay. Well, lovely. Thank you, Bonzo. Great to speak to you. Sorry we found your kill switch there, but have a great weekend. Take care.
Bye.
Always great to speak to Bonzo there. It's nice to have a chat with him. You can have a chat with me as well. Please do. Give me a call. 66 13 68. And Stevie C says, you can't... We were talking about the steam packet and the capacity of Douglas Harbour in terms of being able to take the number of vehicles that are now needed on board. And Stevie C says, you can't blame a larger boat capacity for traffic overloading onto the Prom because the Manxman isn't in service. That's a very good point. Yes, it's the Ben McCree, went to Larne this morning, and yet we still had queues of traffic down the Prom. So is this another problem of the poster boy for the Isle of Man government failures that is the DOI? Okay, we've got a harbour that's, no one's actually planned out the space required to have all the vehicles that we are now carrying on our ferry services. And we were also talking about the number of constituencies that can stand, a number of people who can stand in each constituency, and whether, you could be a candidate and stand in all constituencies. Liz has been on saying, I hope the people with the rule book have got this right. It's incredible that people can stand in different constituencies. Also, in my opinion, the two things the island needs are business and secure borders. Thank you, Liz. Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, immigration and the economy and business is something that a lot of the candidates are talking about, isn't it, Liz? So it'll be interesting if you've spoken to any of your MHKs why they brought this up on the doorstep. Fran says, I think you'll find the problem with the queues on the Prom and the sea terminal is down to the fact that the steam packet have only one check-in desk open. Of course it's fact. Yes and no, Fran. The capacity at Circus Beach there is slowly but surely. I mean, when I worked at the steam packet years ago, it was mainly car space, and of course freight space has been taking it over so much now that passenger car space, there's not that much for it. B says when it comes to the number of people when it comes to voting, it needs to be impressed on people and advertised that a voter has 2 votes but only needs to use 1 vote if they wish. Maybe if they only think 1 out of the 2 candidates is suitable. Thank you for that. I know Andy was discussing that yesterday on the programme. It is going to be interesting, isn't it? Because we have a record number of candidates. I think it's 82 candidates standing, okay, which is a big sign of disillusionment with the current House. Now, the question is, with 82 candidates standing, and some constituents have got 8 candidates, you sit there going, that's going to split the vote. That's going to mean that you might get some very interesting results, because that's normally when you don't get the stronger candidates necessarily returned to the House. So we will see. These are all topics we're going to be discussing over the next few weeks, I can imagine. Robert is on the line. Good afternoon, Robert. How are you?
Kissed out.
Kissed out, boy. Tammy Brow.
Very good, very good. Tommy Barry. One thing I just wanted to mention about politics was we need someone as a casual observer, either on Squarespace or some other platform online, to collate all of the information which is coming out from all the candidates in one place. I know that Manx Radio do a sterling job, but I just feel we need. We had one last time that tried and gave a few results. I'm not really interested in the results. I'm more interested in what they stand for and what they're saying online. If someone could.
Well, in fairness, Robert, that's exactly what we've got. We've got a full election mini-site with all the candidates on there, all their constituency details, what they stand for, their manifestos, the video interviews, the podcasts with all the candidates individually. We'll have all the debates on there. It's all on there in one place.
But it's not taken into account the Facebook posts where people are posting up about sovereignty and immigration and their particular aspects of it, where they can actually see what they've written and get a feel for how things are going to flow in Tynwald. So maybe you're right, maybe I'm wrong, but I just thought it'd be nice if someone, I mean, even a young person maybe who's just thinking about getting into politics, as a casual observer, just to collate all of this on the various websites and say, well, they said this here, they said that here, this person's got this here. It just seems a bit like a Facebook campaign gone a bit mad at the moment, and there's no real centralisation to it. I just thought it could be done on one website.
I think what you're asking for, in terms of if you wanted someone to record everything that any prospective politician ever said on all the social media platforms and things like that.
Not on all of them. Just like what's happening in the run-up to the elections.
All right, okay. And you wanted to talk about domain names?
Oh, well, I was going to go haywire, but I decided that I want to stay sane today.
All right, okay. Well, lovely to chat to you, Robert. Thank you very much for getting in touch. And yeah, Robert's got a challenge for someone there. Come up with a website that compiles some, but not all, of the prospective politicians' ramblings online. Let's have a look at a couple more of your texts that have been coming in. John in Onken says, so many MHKs are using AI to create social media posts. It's so obvious. I'm not going to lie. Yeah, I've spotted a few. And AI, I personally believe AI is a very good tool that you can use for a whole variety of different things in the same way that we use computers for stuff. But yeah, if you're trying to sell yourself as a genuine person, don't use AI to make you sound genuine, if you know what I mean. Francis says, why aren't Manx Radio asking prospective male MHKs, are they or are they not members of a certain secret society that basically runs the island? And why aren't Manx Radio asking, are they currently employed by a company tendering government contracts? There are limits, Francis, to how much conspiracy theory stuff we can actually ask them. Okay, in terms of, I've read many Francis's texts before. There is a declaration of interests that if, when it comes to MHKs, they all declare it. Go online and have a look. And thank you to Desmond, who says, topical, I think this is off the back of what Bonzo was saying, topical left-wing communists view tax the rich. Trying it in the USA, they all left and the cities are bankrupt. Okay, thank you very much for that. James has been on saying, traffic overflowing onto the promenade and Lord Street is surely down to poor management of the available space around the harbour by both the DOI and the steam packet. Can't really blame the larger capacity of Manxman, as it's currently out of service, and this morning was what used to be classed as a normal Ben McCree and Mannin sailing. So, yeah, it's not the Manxman's fault. It's a problem with the harbour. Right, we'll have a chat to Julian just after this.
This Sunday morning, tune into Daybreak between 8 and 9 for Old News to hear the amazing story of peg-leg shooter from Agnish, the three-port Alsatian who helped save the life of a badly injured airman and went on to be officially rewarded for his intelligence. Old News, every Sunday morning in Daybreak, and all episodes available as a podcast via the Manx Radio website or your favourite podcast provider. Old News, I can guarantee We've heard it all before.
Yesterday's news.
Simply income protection from Kestrel Insurance. A choice of benefits. Simple underwriting and peace of mind with a regular income for up to 2 years if you're unable to work due to illness or injury. Kestrel Insurance is registered with the Isle of Man Financial Services Authority.
TE Carbon provide new memorial stones, grave renovations, new inscriptions and fire hearths. Visit us at Hope Street, Castletown or at Broadway, Douglas, or call 844 440. TE Carbon, here when you need us.
Ramsey Care Products, proudly part of the community at St Paul's Square in the north of the island, supplying affordable, quality disability and mobility products. Call 627 177. Ramsey Care Products, affordable mobility solutions for you.
Most builders start with a hammer and saw. Manx Construction start with ideas and imagination. For new build, extension or home office, Manx Construction offer full service from planning to completion. Call Tony on 452 688.
Feeding friends and family with the finest the island has to offer. The Forge Smokehouse and Grill Santon. Fresh Manx produce marinated, slowly cooked, grilled and smoked to perfection right here and served in a gorgeous setting. Just walk in anytime, no booking needed. Parties, family gatherings and weddings, the perfect venue for any occasion. And don't forget our large marquee for any event. Visit theforge.im and see.
Manx Radio.
Manx Radio's Mannin Line for a Friday. Alex in the chair through till 1 when Mark Tiley's in with 1 to 3. It's just gone 12:30. Still plenty of time for you to get your call in and we can have a chinwag about anything that's getting you go. 66 13 68. In terms of the queues for the ferry, about the traffic on the prom, says 951, probably down to security checking people leaving the Isle of Man when obviously they should be checking who's coming here. That is always quite an interesting one, I'm not going to lie. It is very bizarre that the amount of security checks you get leaving the Isle of Man in proportion to what it's like coming to the Isle of Man. And it seems very sort of hit and miss. And the question is, if we're going to have to start doing that when it comes to secure borders, this is another possible example of how politicians never think this through, is that they agree to something. Yes, that sounds like a great idea. We're more security. Everyone should be checked and everyone should check their passports. And then you look at it and how it will work in practice. And that's when compliance people sitting reading stuff off paper think that they've got the best idea ever. And they never think it through practically, and it causes huge amounts of problems. If we're going to have to security check everybody as they come to and leave the island, you're going to need a lot more space and a lot more time to do it. Interesting, isn't it? Thank you very much to Andy, who says, hi, Alex. Regarding the queues at the steam packet, it is people's nature to arrive earlier as the boats are so crowded. Arriving earlier gives better seating options. Security seem to enjoy watching the queues build to gridlock before opening the gate, and they even stand there waving drivers away. Need some intelligence applying to this subject. Thank you very much to that from Southern Andy. Yeah, the conditions on board the Ben McCree has been something of a talking point, isn't it? As of late, because the conditions on board the Manxman are absolutely glorious. Now, the Ben McCree since refit, the cabin-free Ben McCree, as Andy calls it, the seating arrangements, the new canteen that's boxed in, and they've reduced the amount of passenger space in order to put an executive lounge in there as well. There's no windows in the canteen. There is a lot of talk about how the refit of the Ben McCree has not gone down well. But where would we be without her? Let's be honest. And the latest update from the Manxman, still expected to have her back at before the end of September, is the latest information. But she's currently sitting in a wet basin, which is a wet dock, basically. Not dry dock, a wet dock, in Birkenhead and Camel Laird's there. What's the latest? And when it comes to all these issues, what's happening with the new steam packet vessel that's tipped to replace the Mannin? Because the Mannin's getting old. She needs a replacement. Now, it seems pretty obvious from a lot of the talk and the chatter that we're going to lose the Fastcraft. We're going to lose the thing that we have cherished since 1994, I think it was, having a Fastcraft connection to Liverpool in favour of a new slow boat. And whilst money is such a problem, has anyone asked the question, why do we have to buy a new one? One of the most treasured steam packet vessels, the King Orry. That was a second-hand vessel. The Mannin is a second-hand vessel. The Sea Cat before her was a second-hand vessel. The Super Sea Cat was a second-hand vessel. Why do we have to spend £100 million on a new vessel when possibly you could buy a second-hand vessel, run it for 10 to 15 years, refit it, and more of the profits from the steam packet could go back into government coffers? All of these are questions I'd be interested on your opinions on. Julian is on the line. Hello, Julian. Oh,
hi, Alex. How are you?
I'm not bad, thank you. How are you?
Not so bad, not so bad. Yeah, in terms of the security on the island, I mean, we've been put in this position by the out-of-control immigration status in the UK. I mean, you know, it would be much nicer if we didn't have to do all this, but when you're bringing in unknown people from God knows where, who can come here as soon as they're in the common travel area, and some of them seem to be, you know, they're coming in, they throw their passports away, they get new passports, and then they can come and go as they please. And, you know, there was a rather nasty case in Ireland recently. There was nothing to stop that person from coming to the island, actually, was there? Quite easily with no...
Yeah. Well, the more interesting thing... I'm hearing an echo down the line from you, Julian. I'm not...
Do you want me to ring you back?
Yes, actually, because otherwise you're going to be hearing my voice a lot. So if we can get Julian back on the line, and I will deal with that again in a second. Let's go through some of your text while we sort that technical gremlin out. The wonderful world of computers, eh? John in Onken says, no one wants a slow boat. Knowing the government, they'll get an electric one. There are actually electric sea cats. They have started building them in Tasmania, same company that built Mannin. And also, in terms of the Manxman, the Manxman is a hybrid. There's banks and banks of batteries down there, so yeah, you might get that. Let's have a look. And 439. I was a passenger on the Ben last week and I had booked seats in the premium lounge, very satisfactory. But I too noticed we were searched on the way out, but nothing on the return. So we could have been from anywhere, in inverted commas. And thank you to Des, who says, this is how the Berlin Wall started, checking people leaving. The wall was to keep suppressed people in. We never learn from the past. Why do we buy new cars? I'm not sure. The new car. And thank you. I knew this joke was going to appear again at some point. But text at 146, who says, just buy a jet ski and park it up. Yeah, we know where that's coming from. Or what it's referring to. Thank you to Lisa, who says, hi, Alex, you're absolutely right. It doesn't matter what these candidates promise. Once they get in, they can't hope to do any of these things. We need more candidates to realise that and speak to people with honesty and be voted in based on what sort of person they are, what their values are, how they intend to approach working within Tynwald, how they have thus far demonstrated these qualities and their skills in life and work. And then Lisa tells me which candidate she is supporting, but obviously we're in Purda, so I'm not going to mention that bit. But Lisa, it's a very, very good point. Yes. Are we fed up of politicians just telling us what we want to hear and not being able to deliver on it? Julian is back on. Let's see if we've sorted out the tech gremlins. Hello, Julian. You there again?
Right. Is that any better?
That is better. I'm sorry about that. No, the point I was going to make to you there before was when you were talking about Ireland and people being able to come to here. It was announced by Stena Line the other day that now people travelling between Britain and Ireland will be required to produce their passports. And our news team are following up as the fact that, well, if you need a passport to go from Britain to Ireland, how's that going to work if you travel from Britain to the Isle of Man and the Isle of Man to Ireland? At which point do you need your passport? And if so, are we going to need our passports to go into Ireland and go into Britain?
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't make any sense. I mean, at the moment, I think it's kind of battened down the hatches at the moment until the UK get control of their border control, especially down at Dover. Unfortunately, needs must. As much as I don't like the idea of this kind of control on the borders and things in the common travel area, what else can you do?
And but anyway, sorry, we wanted to talk about questions for politicians, didn't you?
Yeah, I'm just curious to know if any of the candidates are prepared to vote to repeal the Climate Change Act.
That would be interesting. Now, what, in terms of you want them to vote to repeal it in its entirety, or
yeah,
okay, and I don't think anyone's put that in their manifesto. What would be the advantages?
well, a shed load of money being saved. I mean, even just the onshore wind farm here is going to be at least 100 million just for the wind farm. Then you're going to need all the batteries that are going to be another 15 to 20 million. You're then going to need a load of synchronous inertia equipment, which will be another 50 million. By the time you finish, you're going to be north of 200 million, and we're going to end up with a situation where the power station during low usage can't be reduced below the level of the minimum demand, and we're going to end up with all the financials unraveling. Because so far they're saying a certain amount of energy, which is 3 times more than anyone else has ever achieved anywhere in the world. The financial case just falls over straight away. So we can save hundreds of millions. We'd be better off getting out of all that, try and improve our local bits with the money that we save, and start doing things like pruning civil service and trying to cut back on. I mean, I don't see. There's another question: is anyone prepared to actually try and reduce the civil service, especially in Manx Care, to try and stop them increasing by tens of millions every year? They're overspending.
Well, I have heard a number of candidates talk about that, and when people start saying about I'm going to save money here, I'm going to cut back here, the question then is where? Because the candidates are brilliant with sweeping statements about where you can save money and cut back the civil service. And then you look at what the civil service does. Now, in terms of, the climate change thing, is that there is a school of thought that the Isle of Man has this view, and it's quite historical. It's back to, every farmer's wife knows how to make bacon. When the Isle of Man felt in the Second World War that it didn't need to do rationing because we're all right, Jack. And eventually they were forced into doing rationing because they were not, on their own. Now, in terms of the fact that there is climate change happening, it's very obvious, from the weather patterns we're having, what's happening in Nepal, things like this, that is scientifically linked to climate change. How long do we just sit here and say, we're all right, Jack, until there's food shortages and things like this?
Yeah, but you say Nepal, but it turned out it was a glacial basin that overflowed, and then that caused they're living in a valley that's thousands of feet high on either side. I mean, and I believe something similar happened in the area last year, but it wasn't widely reported. So even the BBC yesterday was saying that there's a lot of research to be done to see if this is anything to do with climate change or not. So nobody's certain on this, but one thing is for certain, it's costing an absolute fortune to wire wind turbines 1,000 miles from the Hebrides down to London.
and do you know what though, Julian? That it cost us an absolute fortune, 350 million, to put a gas pipeline into the island in order to power a power station. The infrastructure costs money, so the cost isn't necessarily the issue. If you've got if someone has an agenda against green energy, fine, that declare it as their agenda, but infrastructure costs money. Wind farms aren't going to cost more or less or anything else than it cost us to build our gas-powered power station,
Yeah, but don't forget that gas pipeline gives us all the energy we need 24/7 reliably for the last 23 years.
You say reliably. It's not our own energy security. We're reliant on other people for that gas. If there's a problem in the gas market, or when Russia invaded Ukraine, the price of that shoots up, and we all have to pay for it.
Yeah, but my point is that system is obviously wrong for us because we get all our gas from Norway down a pipeline straight from the sea, from the seabed. So why are we having to be forced to pay twice as much for our electricity as we were before? When we're getting it directly from a friendly country like Norway.
Well, you've just answered your own question there, Julian, because we are at the mercy of other people. We haven't got our own energy security. We're at the mercy of the markets away from here. They can charge us what they like. They've got us over a barrel.
Well, we could have done. I mean, remember, I don't know if you've listened recently, but I was talking about the Ørsted paying for soirees, like the recent 70th anniversary gala dinner. Would people have been up in arms if it had been Kroger Gas that had been paying for that? You know what I mean? Because Kroger Gas could have got gas out for us, and then we could have had it ourselves, and we wouldn't wouldn't necessarily have been in the world market. We could have had it for ourselves.
Well, the up in arms a bit about Orsted. I think this is quite funny. This is the difference between regulated journalism and campaigning. Is that Orsted are a business who have sponsored something. Okay, it's not illegal. And now, whether people want their wind farm or not, that's a different matter. But as you say, if Kroger had sponsored it and their gas pipeline, that would people have been up in arms then? Businesses do sponsor events. That's part of their advertising and sponsorship. That's nothing new. We had financial companies doing it. PokerStars were a prime example. They used to sponsor loads of different things. Okay, and you could claim that online gambling is a social issue. So the fact that whether they pay for something or not, it's a sponsorship. That's the business world we live in.
Yeah, but when you talk about making money for the island, there's been a suggestion earlier in the programme that we should tax the wealthier higher. Isn't that completely in conflict with the Tier 1 investor migrant route trying to attract high net worth individuals to the island?
It probably is.
You're going to attract them to the island and you're going to add tax on them. That doesn't make any sense.
Come here and pay more. Yeah, it's not particularly the advert you're looking for, is it?
Not really.
So, Julian, if there's one question, I've got another couple of calls lined up. If there's one question that you would like to ask a candidate, what would it be?
I think I'd like them to have a proper look at everything to do with climate change and all the long-form IPCC reports, not actually saying that there's any increase in man-made influence on flooding or hot weather or deserts or droughts or anything else. They're only relying on a short-form document for policymakers, which is basically a few pages that politicians use. I'd like to ask them, given all the information we've got now, given the fact that the trajectory of pretty much the whole of the UK and the Isle of Man is downwards, and it's costing an absolute fortune to try and do 0.001% of a degree Celsius, if that even is real, I think they need to get realistic with this, because the amount of money that's going to be spent trying to put windmills up all over the place is going to absolutely finish our economy. Look at Mannin. Look what that's going to do to our industries like fisheries and the shipping and adding all that extra on. So
once again, though, you did just state the amount of money it will cost to put up windmills. We're not paying for more Mannin to be put up. That's purely a seabed rental. That's bringing in money. The thing with more Mannin is we are renting out our seabed. We're making money from an asset. So that won't cost us to construct, will it? I take your point on whether it will have any influence on shipping routes and fisheries, but we're not paying for the windmills.
But we will be paying, if they bring electricity to the island that's directly from the wind farm, we'll be paying tens to hundreds of millions in trying to rectify that. And also, are we going to have to pay them, like the UK government does, if we can't take all that they're supplying? In other words, a curtailment fee. So there's all kinds of stuff that's not being asked, probably in the Chamber of Commerce, as to all those questions as well.
But as you say, there's lots of whats and ifs, Julian, but it's the concrete information we need.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
Concrete information indeed.
There we go. Cheers, Julian. Nice to hear Julian's opinion. He does have an opinion. It's blatantly he's got question marks over lots of things, which are lots of whats and ifs. Thank you very much to the texter 806 says Kroger gas, if they'd have got it, would have been sold on global markets. So Julian lying once again. 806, strong words. Tam says, why do people want cruise ship comfort on a 4-hour trip on a car ferry? Madness. I've been travelling Douglas Haitian for 30 years and enjoy the sailing for what it is. Stop moaning, you bunch of whingers. Tam, why not? Why? I'd love to know what business you're in, Tam, where the customer is wrong. Yeah, because actually, if you travel cross-channel, travel on Stena, and it's exactly the kind of service you get with the Manxman. And it's the kind of accommodation we used to get on the King Orry. Okay, I think people forget 30 years ago, Andy Winter was here doing the Mannin line, and people complained like crazy about the third world conditions on board the Ben McCree with only one lounge. Okay, so maybe that's a thought. Right, Dewan is on. Moneyval. Hello, Dewan.
30 years ago, Andy must have only been about 15 then, wasn't he, Alex?
Yes, of course. Yeah, he was broadcasting from the womb, I'll tell you now.
Absolutely. Well, they'll be catching up with you in the next couple of weeks then if you're doing these here road shows.
Yes, it'll be myself, Beth, and Phil Gorn will be there.
Oh, have you ripped Best Levers off her after 2 weeks, have you?
Yes. She's managed to finally get out of the leathers, and she'll be getting into all the posh stuff for next week.
She's out of the pits and into the running.
Exactly. So go on then.
Yeah.
Money, Val.
Well, yeah, a couple of things. First of all, you were talking about whether people should stand in areas that they don't live in.
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's relevant actually. I mean, if people are actually might live in one area but work in another and have an interest there. So I get how it used to be, but I think the way we are now, I think if you feel you can do better for that area than your own, then why not stand there?
Okay.
And this is why I brought up the one vote thing the other day and kicked that off, because it may give a fair indication of the people that you want in, rather than putting in a poor second who you think you have to put in, but you don't necessarily need to.
Why do you think, though, June? Just back to the point of, if they're standing in a constituency that they don't live in, okay, almost a quarter of them this time aren't. Why do you think they wouldn't? Why wouldn't you stand in a place where people know you and know your values and things like this? Because surely half of your, or maybe not half, but a lot of your campaigning is done for you.
Yes, but, I mean, we're on a small island for one. So, I mean, I spend a lot of time in Peel or Port Erin. I have an affinity for the place. I like down there and walk around and look at the place. You see what the pitfalls in other areas. So maybe you have a feeling that you can stand there. And obviously, you're going to look at the demographics of the voting and see which is going to be the strongest place you can get in as well. So there's a few avenues of thought on that one. But with the island being so small, I could understand if you were living in Liverpool and standing in Manchester, it would be a different thing. But we all travel around the island quite frequently, so I don't see a problem with that per se. Okay. Now I don't think so. The money, Val, and again we're talking before about compliance and yes. Are we over-regulated here? I think you mentioned that right at the start. Is that why these companies are going? And I spoke with Andy about this the other day and saying, well, once Moneyval is finished, we can full steam ahead and we can get on with things. And I don't understand that, because we're just ticking boxes. We're ticking who's Moneyval, and we're ticking boxes. And like you say, these companies, if they can't do business here, they're not going to stop doing business because of Moneyval. They're just going to go somewhere else. So, is it compliance that's wrecking our island? Over compliance? We're ticking too many boxes where we shouldn't be, and bring business in here. Is Moneyval a type of thing like, you're taking your car for an MOT and you switch the seatbelt out to get it through, you get your ticket, and then you put your old seatbelt back on again?
To be honest, I don't know in terms of that. I can tell you what Moneyval is for people who, first-time listeners, as it were. It's a monitoring body. It's a permanent monitoring body of the Council of Europe. 35 member states and jurisdictions are assessed by Moneyval, and it ensures an effective compliance with the international standards to counter money laundering and terrorist financing. So there we go. And it says here that through decisions, the Committee of Ministers, 2 members, states are also members, which is Israel and the Holy See, as well as several territories for which international relations the UK is responsible for. So that the UK is within Moneyval, and it also then regulates Guernsey, the Isle of Man, Jersey, and the UK overseas territory of Gibraltar. There you go.
Yeah, and I know. It's aligned with FATFA, isn't it? FATF. I think they're another regulatory body. I noticed, I think about 3 years ago, Montenegro was having a problem scraping through with it. And I mean, if anyone knows about Montenegro, there's a massive amount of Russian money gone in there in the last 10 years. But they kind of tick boxes and scrape through. But I'm just wondering on compliance, and you're saying about what our MHK should be looking at going into government is, sitting down and saying, what do we need here compliance-wise? Are we totally over-regulated? It's like I mentioned the other day, ESGs and DEIs. They probably started off with great intentions in mind, but the ideology has now gone crazy. It's a bit like BLM and LGBT. It starts off with great thought in it and representing certain things, but it's just taken over as an ideology, and it wrecks everywhere. And I think that's where we're at the stage with all that kind of stuff, all these lettered abbreviations and control and compliance. So I think maybe if the new MHKs ease up on that, and start looking at things with a bit of common sense, we might be able to find some money avenues to get us back on our feet again. It's not going to be an easy run for the next 5 years.
It's not. And in terms of easy avenues to go down or non-easy avenues, which avenues do you think they should be exploring? Very quickly, because your theme's about to come in.
Yeah, you caught me on that one. You know what? You're asking someone off the street. I would have to go in there and actually, get a feel for it. There's the stuff, Alex, that we might say blatantly here, and obviously it's not going to work. But I'm sure, Miles Walker and Eddie Tier, they found ways years ago of making the thing work. I'm sure there's ways there, but I think control and compliance is one of the mechanisms that's making things clunky at the moment. That's for sure. I think that's the first thing we need to look at.
Okay, thanks, Duran. Nice to speak to you. Cheers, boy. Okay, we're out of time. That was very pleasant and enjoyable. Thank you very much for the chinwag over the last hour. Stick around. Mark Tiley's up next with One to Three. Remember, you could be asking questions of your prospective candidates, or just come and watch them answer other people's questions at our constituency debates. They start next Monday with Albury, Castletown and Maloo. You can get your free tickets online at manxradio.com. Thank you to my producer today, Howard Kane. I've been Alex Brindley. Have a lovely weekend. Take care. Ta-da.